Hello and welcome to this week's video where we're going to be talking about aiming in video games. Again, this isn't about sensitivity in video games though or anything, but this is instead about the different types of aiming in the games. So before we get started, make sure you subscribe to the channel and follow me at twitch.tv/script6. I stream there extremely often. All the links are in the description below. And let's get started. So, when it comes to video games, it can be dumbed down to two different types of aiming, tactical and reflex. Tactical aim comes from games like CSGO or Valorant or Rainbow Six Siege. The style of aiming is about being smart about your crosshair placement and holding corners so that if someone peeks, you can just pop their head immediately. This comes down to who's smarter about their crosshair placement, who's holding the right angles, and who has the fastest reaction time. Now, that's the basic description of tactical aiming, but let's give you the basics of reflex aiming before we go into how to get better at both of them. So, reflex aiming is somewhat the opposite of tactical aiming. Instead of sitting and holding angles, you're instead running around and constantly flicking around, trying to be aware of your surroundings as you possibly can be. When you finally see someone, your goal is to get your crosshair on their body as quickly as possible and start shooting them before they start shooting you. Prime examples of games that involve this type of aiming would be like COD, Titanfall 2, or Apex Legends. This aiming becomes less about hitting your headshots so that you can one-tap people, and more about getting your crosshair on the enemy's body and tracking them better than they can track you. Okay, so now that we know the difference between the two, tactical aiming you have to think more about where your crosshair is and holding corners, and reflex aiming you're flicking around and trying to move your crosshair to targets faster than they can to you. But now, we get to talk about how to get better at each of them respectively. The biggest tip for both of these is just play the game. I can't overstate how much just putting time into your respective game will get you used to that style of aiming. But now it's time for specific tips. When it comes to tactical aiming, you need to make sure you're smart. When it comes to Valorant or CS, of course there's the obvious tip of if you're holding an angle, just make sure it's the right angle. A lot of times people will stare at a corner that they think somebody's about to swing, but instead they end up getting shot in the back. Make sure you're thinking about what you would do if you were in the enemy's situation. When it comes to tac shooting, it's also recommended taking into account the movement speed of the game. So instead of holding a corner and your crosshair is right next to it, just right on top of it, take into account how quickly your enemy can swing around and account for that. So this example of Valorant, a lot of people usually hold their crosshair slightly more out here, since so often people will just wide swing in Valorant. If you don't have crazy reaction times, this could be helpful. Now, when it comes down to reflex aiming, situational awareness is paramount to me. Knowing where your enemies will be coming from and making sure you're taking as many 1v1s as possible is super important. If you're not in a 1v1, since usually people are just throwing themselves at you in games like these, make sure your decision making is on point. If you see two people double peek you and one's closer to you than the other, just instantly flick to one of them and fire at them until they're dead, and then you can decide whether you want to take the next fight or need to take cover. Or you might not want to take, or you want to just take cover immediately and not take the fight at all. It's just completely situational. But other than decision making and situational awareness, you just really need to make sure you're good at tracking for games like these. Alright, I want to give a few more tips that pertain to both types of aiming. First thing is make sure you can control your recoil. You need to be able to shoot your guns where you're trying to shoot them, even when you're spraying them. Learn to counteract your recoil for each gun. Next up is headshots. Headshot multipliers are insane in each and every game. In tech shooters, if you bought a good gun, you can usually one-tap with a headshot, which is crazy good. And in reflex shooters, you can literally be losing your fight, turn around, hit all headshots, and then still win your fight because of it. Headshots are super important. Last few quick tips: make sure you find a good sensitivity, I have a video about that, and make sure you can flick to targets very well. Also, aim trainers are good. Look into Kovacs and aim labs if you want to get really into it. But that is the end of another one of my aiming rants. If you like the video, or me for some reason, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel, and make sure to follow me at twitch.tv/script6. Again, all the links are down in the description below. But thank you guys for watching. It does mean a lot. I will see you guys next week. Goodbye.